Picture this. He's the charming guy in your lecture hall, the one who offers to help when your car breaks down, the well-spoken, ambitious guy who seems to have it all figured out. But behind that carefully crafted image, a predator, more cunning and cruel than anyone could imagine. That was Ted Bundy. His name alone brings a chill, right? But what if the most terrifying part of his story isn't just the horror of his crimes, but the incredibly complex and hidden workings of his mind? Secrets that, once they started to surface, forced us all to look evil right in its ordinary, smiling face. Ted Bundy. Decades after his execution, that name still casts a long, dark shadow. We've all heard the headlines, know the horrifying number of victims, and the chilling charisma that fooled so many. He was the classic wolf in sheep's clothing, the monster who looked just like one of us. But if we dig deeper than the headlines and the sensationalism, we find a maze of psychological twists and turns that investigators and psychologists painstakingly pieced together. These aren't just minor details in a killer's biography. They're huge insights into psychopathy, manipulation, and the terrifying effectiveness of what experts call the mask of sanity. In this video, we're diving into those hidden depths. We're going beyond what's commonly known to expose the dark psychological secrets Ted Bundy took to his grave, secrets that changed how we understand and hunt the predators who walk among us. Get ready to uncover the unknown truths about Bundy's hidden mind. When Ted Bundy first hit the public radar, he was a puzzle, a terrifying contradiction. He didn't fit the typical image of a deranged killer. Instead, he was handsome, articulate, smart, a law student with seemingly bright political prospects. He was the kind of young man parents would approve of, someone society would trust. And that was his hunting ground. His victims were often young, intelligent women who might have seen a bit of themselves in his apparent normalcy, his charm. Bundy's crime spree in the 1970s sent waves of panic across multiple states. Young women were disappearing, their lives brutally ended, leaving behind baffled investigators and terrified communities. The sheer geographic range of his crimes was a huge challenge for law enforcement back then. They just weren't set up to connect scattered cases across state lines. Each new disappearance, each grim discovery, added another layer to the picture of a killer who seemed to operate with chilling precision and an almost uncanny ability to avoid being caught. The public, glued to media reports, saw a monster, sure, but a monster whose apparent normality was perhaps the most monstrous thing about him. He became a dark fascination, a subject of horrified whispers. How could someone so outwardly presentable, so well-spoken, be responsible for such terrible acts? This question hung heavy, and it was this very question that started to peel back the layers of Ted Bundy's carefully built persona, forcing a much deeper, more unsettling look at the mind within. The charm wasn't separate from his evil. It was a horrifyingly essential part of it. Understanding that was the first step in understanding the real Ted Bundy. You've probably heard the term mask of sanity when people talk about psychopaths. But Ted Bundy didn't just wear this mask. He lived in it, perfected it, and used it as a weapon. Coined by the pioneering psychiatrist Hervey Cleckley, the mask of sanity describes how psychopaths can put on a convincing show of being normal, of having deep emotions and social graces, all while feeling none of that inside. For Bundy, this wasn't just an act. It was how he operated, his main tool for luring people in and making them drop their guard. Think about it. Bundy moved easily through complex social situations. He went to university, was active in political campaigns, and had relationships. He could be incredibly polite, make engaging conversation, offer help, all tactics to gain trust. Witnesses and surviving victims often mentioned his believable demeanor, his ability to seem harmless, even caring, right up until the moment he attacked. He'd pretend to be injured, impersonate authority figures, or simply rely on his clean-cut looks to lower defenses. This mask wasn't just about seeming normal. It was about carefully crafting an illusion of empathy and kindness where none actually existed. Psychologists who studied Bundy pointed out his superficial charm, how easily words flowed for him, and his knack for mimicking human emotions without actually feeling them. This let him manipulate everyone around him with terrifying ease, from his victims to, at times, even law enforcement and the media during his trials. The chilling power of Bundy's mask of sanity was in how believable it was. He played on our societal biases. We're often taught to trust people who seem educated, articulate, and well put together. Bundy knew this instinctively. He showed the world that the most dangerous predators aren't always the ones who look obviously menacing. Sometimes they're the ones who look just like everyone else, skillfully hiding the emptiness inside. This realization was a tough lesson, forcing a major shift in how we see and try to identify such individuals. The mask he wore wasn't just hiding a monster, it was the monster in its most deceptive, sneaky form. Before Ted Bundy, hunting for serial killers was a much cruder process, often held back by a poor understanding of the criminal mind and disconnected law enforcement efforts. Bundy, through his horrifying reign, unintentionally became a catalyst for a revolution in how investigations were done. His ability to blend in, his intelligence, and his chilling normalcy forced investigators to look past the obvious and dive into the then new field of behavioral science. One of the biggest changes was the rise of behavioral profiling. The FBI's Behavioral Science Unit, with pioneers like Robert Ressler and John Douglas, started to systematically study offenders like Bundy. They realized that old methods focused heavily on physical evidence, but Bundy often left very little behind or operated in ways that confused standard procedures. Profiling aimed to understand the why behind the crimes, the killer's motives, their patterns, their personality traits, to try and predict their behavior and narrow down the search. Bundy's mask of sanity became a key case study, showing that predators didn't always fit the stereotype of the visibly disturbed outcast. Investigators learned to closely examine patterns of victim selection, the method of abduction and murder, the MO, and the psychological needs the killer was trying to satisfy. Bundy's crimes, spanning states like Washington, Utah, Colorado, and Florida, also glaringly exposed a huge flaw in American law enforcement: the lack of cooperation between agencies. Back in the 1970s, information sharing between different police departments, especially across state lines, was minimal. Bundy exploited this, moving from one place to another, basically a ghost in the system. The desperate need to catch him pushed authorities to work together in ways they never had before, laying the groundwork for national databases and coordinated task forces that are standard practice today. The FBI's role in sharing information about Bundy's methods became a kind of blueprint for future multi-state investigations. What's more, Bundy's case really sharpened the focus on victimology. Investigators carefully analyzed who he chose as victims, usually young, attractive women, often with long hair parted in the middle. Understanding this pattern wasn't just about identifying who he targeted, but why. What did these women represent to him? How did his choices fit his psychological makeup? This focus on the victim's profile became a vital part of building a profile of the offender. Even Bundy himself, in a twisted sort of way, contributed to the science that would eventually help catch others like him. During his post-conviction interviews, especially with people like Special Agent Bill Hagmaier or Stephen Michaud and Hugh Ainsworth for their book, Bundy talked a lot about his crimes, often in the third person. He offered these chillingly detached insights into the mind of a serial killer. These interviews, while definitely manipulative on his part, gave profilers priceless data, helping them fine-tune their understanding of how predators think. He thought he was playing a game, outsmarting them, but really, he was giving them a roadmap to the dark territory of his own mind, and minds like it. The hunt for monsters changed forever, not just because of the horror Bundy inflicted, but because of the urgent, desperate need to understand the man behind that horrifying mask. To really try and grasp the hidden mind of Ted Bundy, we have to go beyond simple labels and look at the complex mix of psychological traits that defined him. While he's often just called a psychopath, Bundy's psychological makeup was a more nuanced and terrifying picture, famously marked by what psychologists call the dark triad. The dark triad refers to a specific combo of three distinct but related nasty personality traits: psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism. Bundy had all three, dialed up to extreme levels. First, psychopathy. This means a profound lack of empathy, an inability to feel remorse or guilt, impulsiveness, though Bundy often balanced this with careful planning and antisocial behavior. He could inflict unimaginable suffering without a shred of compassion. His victims were just objects, tools for his own gratification. Second, narcissism. Bundy had an inflated sense of his own importance, a grandiose view of his abilities, and a desperate need for admiration and control. He truly believed he was superior, entitled to do whatever he wanted. This narcissism was obvious in his courtroom behavior, his craving for media attention, and his belief that he could outsmart everyone. Third, Machiavellianism. This trait involves a manipulative, cynical, and exploitative way of dealing with people. Machiavellian types are strategic, calculating, and see others as pawns to be used for their own benefit. Bundy's charm, his carefully constructed personas, these were all signs of this manipulative cunning. Some believe he studied psychology not out of academic interest, but to get better at manipulating people. What made Bundy especially dangerous was that he wasn't the stereotypical, out-of-control psychopath you often see in movies. Research, including analyses like those by Professor Thomas Whittaker, suggests Bundy scored high on traits like antagonism, being deceptive, callous, arrogant, extroversion, being engaging, assertive, and even conscientiousness, being organized, diligent, skilled. Critically, he was unusually low in neuroticism, meaning he rarely felt anxiety, fear, or guilt. This emotional stability, this chilling calmness under pressure, allowed him to plan his crimes so carefully, often with long cooling-off periods in between. This made him incredibly hard to predict and catch. He didn't kill in fits of rage. His violence was calculated, controlled, and had a purpose. His intelligence, often hyped up as genius level, was more accurately above average, perhaps cunning and street smart rather than academically brilliant. Criminal psychologist Lydia Bennick, for instance, suggested his IQ was likely average, despite some claims, and that he might have struggled with the intellectual demands of law school. His genius was really in his social engineering, his ability to read and exploit human vulnerabilities, and his meticulous, almost obsessive, planning and execution of his crimes. He was a student of human behavior, not for connection, but for predation. The combination of these dark triad traits, along with his emotional detachment and methodical nature, created a predator of terrifying efficiency. He wasn't just broken, he was intricately wired for deceit and destruction, a psychological maze that investigators and psychologists are still trying to fully map out. One of Ted Bundy's most formidable and terrifying psychological tools was his incredible ability to be a human chameleon. He could shift his persona, his demeanor, even aspects of his appearance, to fit his predatory needs. He became whatever was necessary to gain trust, disarm suspicion, and lure his victims. This wasn't just acting, it was a deeply ingrained part of his psychopathy, a display of his manipulative intellect and profound lack of a stable, genuine self. Think of the different disguises he used: the charming student, the concerned citizen, the injured motorist needing help, even an authority figure like a police officer. Each role was carefully chosen and played with chilling conviction. He famously used a cast or sling on his arm, faking an injury to get sympathy and make himself seem less threatening, a trick that successfully lured several victims to their deaths. He understood that a handsome, well-dressed young man apparently in distress would trigger a compassionate response in many, especially the kind, helpful young women he targeted. This chameleon-like quality went beyond his direct interactions with victims. He manipulated everyone around him: girlfriends, colleagues, acquaintances, and for a while, even the legal system. He could be intensely persuasive, able to talk his way out of suspicious situations or cast doubt on the evidence against him. His study of psychology and law was likely, in part, an academic exercise in understanding the systems and people he planned to exploit. Criminal psychologist Lydia Bennick suggested that Bundy studied psychology to learn how to better manipulate people and play with their emotions, basically honing skills he already naturally possessed. His courtroom behavior during his trials was a masterclass in this manipulative ability. He chose to represent himself in parts of his Florida trial, a move that got him a ton of media attention and allowed him to grandstand, to project an image of an intelligent, wronged man fighting for his life. He played to the cameras, fully aware of the public's fascination, trying to control the story even as the evidence against him piled up. This ability to seamlessly shift and deceive taught investigators a crucial and unsettling lesson: that the most dangerous predators aren't always those who stand out, but those who can perfectly blend in, mirroring the expectations and exploiting the trust of those around them. Bundy wasn't just wearing a mask, he was a collection of masks, each one carefully crafted and used with lethal intent. His self was a void, filled only by the reflection he chose to show the world at any given moment. This made him incredibly elusive, a ghost who could walk through society, leaving a trail of devastation, because he knew exactly how to appear as anything but the monster he truly was. Beyond the sensational headlines and the well-known facts of Ted Bundy's case, there are layers of psychological truths and operational realities that many people have never heard, details that shatter common myths and give us a more precise, and perhaps even more disturbing, understanding of this infamous predator. One common myth is that Bundy was a singular, diabolical genius, an intellectual mastermind who outwitted everyone for years through sheer brilliance. The reality, supported by psychological assessments and expert analysis, is more complicated. While he was certainly intelligent and had a cunning, manipulative mind, his IQ was generally considered above average but not in the genius range. Professor Thomas Whittaker's research, for example, pointed to traits like high conscientiousness, meaning he was skilled, organized, and diligent, which helped him evade capture more than raw brainpower did. His success as a killer came less from extraordinary intellect and more from meticulous planning, an obsessive attention to detail, an almost supernatural ability to adapt, and his skill in exploiting societal norms and the weaknesses of both his victims and the fragmented law enforcement systems of the time. Another little-known fact is how Bundy, ironically and without meaning to, helped build the very science that was being developed to catch him and others like him. During his years on death row, Bundy had extensive interviews with FBI profilers like Bill Hagmaier and authors Stephen Michaud and Hugh Ainsworth. In these sessions, often talking about his crimes in a detached third-person way, he gave a chillingly intimate look into the thought processes, motivations, and methods of a serial sexual homicide offender. He thought he was manipulating his interviewers, maybe trying to delay his execution or simply enjoying the attention. But in doing so, he offered invaluable data that helped refine the FBI's behavioral profiling techniques. This contributed to a deeper understanding of how such predators think, plan, and operate. It's a disturbing paradox. One of the 20th century's most notorious killers ended up providing crucial lessons for those dedicated to stopping future ones. Perhaps the most profound unknown truth is the sheer, unadulterated power of his mask of sanity. We've talked about the concept, but its true depth is often underestimated. Bundy's case wasn't just about a charming man who did bad things. It was a demonstration of how a complete lack of empathy, combined with high superficial charm and an ability to mimic normal human emotional responses, can create a predator who is practically undetectable by our usual social radar. He didn't just fool strangers, he fooled people who knew him for years, people who worked with him, people who loved him. This forced a painful societal and criminological reckoning with the fact that evil doesn't always show up with horns and a pitchfork. Sometimes it comes with a winning smile, an offer of help, and a well-rehearsed line, leaving us to question the very foundations of trust and intuition. The most terrifying secret Bundy's mind held was how utterly ordinary, how disarmingly normal, the face of true evil could be. One of the most persistent and haunting questions about Ted Bundy, and really any serial killer, is, why? What turns a person into a predator capable of such profound cruelty and violence? While Bundy's case offers some clues, it also highlights just how incredibly complex it is to pinpoint the origin of such darkness, forcing us to move beyond simple nature versus nurture arguments. Bundy's early life has been closely examined. Born Theodore Robert Cowell in 1946, his early years were marked by family secrets and potential instability. He was born to Eleanor Louise Cowell at a home for unwed mothers. For years, he was raised believing his grandparents were his parents and his mother was his older sister, a deception that undoubtedly created a confusing and potentially damaging foundation for his developing mind. The full impact of this early family deceit on his psychological development is still debated by experts. Some accounts suggest there were early warning signs, classic red flags for later antisocial behavior, childhood cruelty to animals, a fascination with knives, and an early interest in violent or macabre things. Forensic psychologist Darrell Turner mentioned an incident where a young Bundy allegedly placed kitchen knives around a sleeping family member. However, it's important, as experts caution, that not everyone with a troubled childhood or who shows some early warning signs becomes a serial killer, and not all serial killers have obviously abusive or traumatic backgrounds. Bundy's case challenged, and continues to challenge, the idea that a single factor like childhood abuse or a specific traumatic event is solely responsible for creating a monster. Instead, it points towards a more intricate and disturbing mix of factors. This could include a genetic predisposition towards certain personality traits, like those in the dark triad, early developmental experiences that shape or warp one's ability to feel empathy and form attachments, environmental influences, and the crucial element of choice and opportunity. Bundy wasn't just a passive victim of bad circumstances. He made choices, nurtured his dark fantasies, and meticulously planned his actions. While we can identify psychological structures like his profound psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism. Understanding exactly how these traits came together and grew to such a monstrous degree is a puzzle that may never be fully solved. His case is a stark reminder that the human mind, particularly one capable of such extreme deviation, is a profoundly complex and often mysterious territory. The why of Ted Bundy isn't a simple answer found in a single event or diagnosis. It's more like a chilling convergence of factors that sculpted him into the predator he became, a combination that continues to fuel research and debate in psychology and criminology. The terrifying truth might be that there isn't one single cause, but a dark recipe with ingredients we're still struggling to fully identify and understand. Ted Bundy was more than just a serial killer. He was a horrifying catalyst. He didn't just leave a scar on society through the lives he destroyed. He fundamentally changed our perception of evil itself. His case peeled back the veneer of civility to reveal the terrifying idea that monsters don't always lurk in the shadows with monstrous features. Sometimes they smile, they charm, they walk among us, hidden by an almost impenetrable mask of sanity. The dark psychological secrets uncovered from Bundy's life and crimes provided a brutal, but necessary, education. Investigators learned that the absence of obvious signs of disturbance could be a sign in itself, that charm could be a weapon, and that intelligence could be twisted to serve the most depraved ends. His complex psychological profile, marked by the dark triad of psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism, combined with an unnerving emotional stability and meticulousness, forced a rethink of what a predator could look like and how they could operate. The revolution in investigative techniques, the birth of modern behavioral profiling, the urgent need for interagency cooperation, the deeper analysis of victimology, these were all, in part, forged in the fire of the Bundy investigations. He inadvertently taught law enforcement how to hunt for the darkness that hides in plain sight, the kind of darkness he so expertly embodied. But perhaps Bundy's most unsettling legacy is the enduring question he left us with. How well do we truly know anyone? His ability to deceive those closest to him, to live a double life with such apparent ease, is a chilling reminder of the limits of human intuition and the terrifying capacity for deceit hidden within some individuals. He proved that the most terrifying monsters aren't necessarily those who look different, but those who have mastered the art of appearing just like us. Ted Bundy's hidden mind, with its terrifying secrets, may never be fully illuminated, but the insights gleaned from its dark corners continue to inform how we understand, identify, and pursue the most elusive and dangerous of predators. His shadow is a long one, a constant, unsettling reminder that the human psyche holds potential for both incredible good and unimaginable evil, and that sometimes the difference is hidden behind the most ordinary of faces. The shadows of minds like Ted Bundy's are long and complex. If you find these explorations into the darker corners of psychology and criminal investigation fascinating, and you want to understand more about the forces that shape such figures and the methods used to bring them to justice, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. We regularly explore these intricate cases, trying to shed light on the unseen and the unknown. And if you have thoughts or insights on Bundy's psychology or other cases you'd like to see us cover, please share them in the comments below. Your engagement helps us create content that truly digs deep.